Okay, thank you guys. So then we can get going. So I explain you first how it's gonna be. I'm now going to install Arch Linux from beginning to end. That means from the first command to the desktop environment. And yeah, great to see people coming up on the chat. Thanks for the feedbacks, guys. Thanks for the feedbacks. And so I'm now routed in with SSH into VirtualBox so that I can have a bigger terminal so that you guys can see the terminal easier. So we are going to install Arch Linux on a UEFI system, and I would say let's get going. So the first thing we always do now when you boot up the machine with your ISO is to check, of course, if you have an internet connection. Now, if you have an Ethernet cable attached to your computer, you will have an IP directly because it's going to be configured directly. So in my case, because this is VirtualBox, if I type in now IP space A, which is going to check the IP address of my machine, you can see here, sorry, I forgot to turn off my notification here. Sorry about that. There you go. So you can see here I have an IP ending with 21, and this is because I have an IP here on my Ethernet connection. So if you have Wi-Fi, in this case you will have to type in Wi-Fi slash menu, dash menu, sorry, and hit enter. And if I hit enter now, I get an error because I don't have any Wi-Fi card in my VirtualBox. But if you do have a Wi-Fi card, you will see a list of networks here. You can select yours, enter your password, and you will have an IP like me. And once you have an IP, we can proceed to the next step. So I'll just have a look at the chat if everything is up here. Everything is good. There is a big delay. Yeah, I know. This is the latency, the YouTube latency. I can imagine also that tonight there's going to be some people online, so it's probably going to make it's probably going to be a little bit more latency than usual. Yeah, I know. I know. I see the messages way later than you're writing them. All right. Well, I will stop anyway sometimes, and I'll let you guys then write in the questions on the chat, and I'll take a little time before they come up, so we have enough time to answer them. Alrighty. So if we have an IP now, again, let's check it again. IP space A. So we have our IP here, and the first step we need to do we need to configure the internet time. So we need to synchronize basically the time with the internet, the time of our machine, of our VirtualBox in my case, with the internet. So to do this, we'll type in this command, time date CTL, and the parameter is set-ntp true. So what we are saying here, we are telling the system to synchronize the network time protocol on our machine to the internet, and the value is true. That means it has to be synchronized. If it's false, it means it will not synchronize. So that's very simple. And then we'll just hit enter, and that's done for the internet. So this is the first step. Now, some of you guys surely want to know about the mirror list. The mirror list in Arch Linux defines how fast or how slow we are going to download packages during the installation. So there are many ways on how to work on the mirror list. I'm just going to go through the wiki official article, and that is by editing the mirror list itself. So for this, we are going to type in nano, which is the editor, which comes pre-installed in the installer. And the mirror list is under /etc /pacman -d .d, sorry, and then mirror list. Then we hit enter, and you see here we have a list of countries with the servers, with the relative servers here. So for example, I'm now located in Switzerland, so I would have to scroll down, but I'm lazy and I rather search for that. So I'll hit Control W, and we have a search box opening up here at the bottom of the screen. So I'll type in Swit with a Z and hit enter to search. And you can see I have it here. So the server normally is going to be under here, but I already cut it out. You cut the line here with Control K, and then you would have to scroll up on the top of the file which is a little bit long. I'll try to go a little faster here. And you will just paste it up here on the empty space with Control U, and there you have the list. Normally you have the list of the closest mirrors to you. Then you will exit this editor by hitting Control O and then Enter, and to save the file, and then Control X to exit the editor. Then we need to refresh the database because we changed the order of the mirrors. So we'll type in pacman-syyy to synchronize the database and hit enter. And now we are sure that our database is up to date and with the fastest mirrors on top. So I think we can proceed on to the next point. Now this has everything to do with the internet. And we can proceed to the disks. So let me type in shortly lsplk. And because I want to show you here one thing, and on this virtual machine here, I have one drive called SDA, which is 128 gigabytes of space. This is where I want to install Arch Linux. I have here SR0. This is the ISO where the Arch ISO is mounted. And this is a loop device, which is always there. So this is where we want to install Arch Linux. Arch Linux is going to be installed on the SDA disk. On your machine, it might vary depending on the type of drive you have. If you have an SSD or if you have an HDD, it can be NVMe, it can be STA or something else. If you have multiple drives, you might see also something like SDB or something like NVMe 1N or something like that. Depends really on how what kind of disks you have in your machine. Anyway, in my case here, I have one drive STA, and so we need to partition this drive. So this is a UEFI system. And because it's a UEFI system, I need to partition the drive with one EFI partition. And then I have the choice to partition the drive with one root partition or with one root partition and a home partition. So I'm going to install in this case the EFI partition and a root partition. And then later during the installation, I'm going to also create a swap file. As this is a relatively new system, so to say, I rather create a swap file than a swap partition. So swap partition would be maybe more helpful with an older machine with not so much RAM, so that the swap partition can use that space in conjunction with the RAM when the computer needs more space to work. With newer machines, a swap file is probably a better choice because it's resizable and it can be recreated at any time, while the swap partition is a little bit more complicated. So let's begin partitioning the disk. And to do this, we'll use fdisk, which is one of the partitioning tools for Linux. There are many others, but I'm going to use fdisk in this tutorial. And then we enter the name of the disk, which is under the device directory. So we type in /dev/SDA and hit enter. And you see we have here a few lines. One is saying created a new DOS disk label. So this is a UEFI system, and we need to create here a GPT label. As for a UEFI system is actually required. So to change the disk label here, it's very simple. We type in G for GPT and hit enter. And now we created a new GPT disk label. That's very simple. So now we create the first partition, and we create one new partition by typing in N for new, very simple, and hit enter. We accept the default here for the first partition number. This is partition number 1. So I just hit enter here to accept the default. And I'll accept also the default for the first sector because this is the first sector where I can actually write on the disk. So that's fine for me, and I hit enter. And the last sector defines how big this partition is going to be. So this is the EFI partition, and it doesn't have to be bigger than a couple of 100 megabytes. So I want to make it 500 megabytes. So for that, I will type in plus 500. And then I'll type in the capital M, as this defines the size for megabytes. So we can define the size in kilobytes, megabytes, gigabytes, terabytes, or petabytes. Petabytes for the EFI partition will not be possible. So we'll type in the capital M to create it in megabytes and hit enter. Now, I don't worry about the file system right now because I'm going to format the partitions anyway later. I want to show you the commands for that. So we'll just proceed to partition the drive with the second partition. So again, we repeat the process. We'll type in N for new. Again, I accept the default number 2 because that's fine. That's the second partition. I again accept the default for the first sector because it's writing on the first sector possible. So I hit enter here. And I accept also the default for the last sector because I want this partition to take the remainder of the disk. So I'll just hit enter here. Okay, so we created the partitions, but we have one last step before we can proceed, and that is to write these changes to the disk. Otherwise, we cannot do anything else. So to do that, we'll type in W for write and hit enter. And the program tells us that we now alter the partition table and the partitions are now created. So let me clean up the terminal. I'll type in again lsblk. And as you can see here, we have now SDA1, which is 500 megabytes, and SDA2, which is around 127 gigabytes. So it uses basically the remainder of the disk, which is exactly what we did. Okay, so that's it for the partitioning. Now let me see some questions in the chat. Still trying to hire Arch Jedi. Well, I'm gonna get my lightsaber if you want, Chuck. So we are installing plain Arch Linux with a desktop environment, Glorix. I'm probably going to install GNOME in this case because it has been updated a few days ago. Enderman, yes, you can give it also 100 megabytes. That's gonna be also fine. I rather be a little bit more generous, but you can do it also with 100 megabytes. That's fine. Yes, for the EFI partition. Yeah. Okay. So we now can proceed to formatting the partitions. And the first thing I'm going to do is to format SDA1, which is our EFI partition. So our EFI partition needs to be formatted with a FAT file system, with a FAT file system. So to do that, we'll type in mkfs to say make file system, then a dot, and then we specify which file system we want to install. In our case is FAT, and then we type in a space, and then we need to define which kind of FAT partition we want to format, we want to create. So there are two FAT file system types. So one is a 16 and one is a 32. In this case, we are going to use the 32. So we'll type in dash capital F and then 32 a space, and then the partition path. So /dev, because it's under the devices, /STA1, and hit enter. Now we repeat the same process with SDA2, but we are going to format that with an ext4 file type. Now we could format this with another file type like Btrfs or XFS, but I'm going to use ext4 because it's one of the most popular and actually it's one of the more mature still today. So we'll do this by typing in mkfs, so make file system, a dot, and then the file system type is ext4, and then the partition path, so /dev /STA2, and hit enter. And there you go. So let me check the chat again here. What about a separate home partition? Yes. So we could theoretically create a third partition and separate the home partition from the root partition. The advantage there is, of course, if you need to reinstall the system, you can reinstall it in the root partition, and you'll just have basically to mount the home partition on a new directory, and you'll have all your data there. That's definitely a very good, system of partitioning, also with a separate home partition. You can also eventually create a home partition on a separate drive. So you have the EFI and root partition on first drive and the home partition, for example, on a second drive. That would work also very well. But in this example, I just chose to create only one root partition. Thanks for the feedback, Chris. I'm glad that it helped you out with Windows 10. So let me clean up the terminal here. We go forward. So we partition, we formatted. Now we mount. So let me pull up again lsblk because I like to have my partition's name in front of me. And we proceed to the mounting. So the first partition I want to mount is the partition where we are going to install Arch Linux in. And that is going to be SDA2, right? The bigger partition. So to mount that partition, we are going to type in mount. Then what we are going to mount, so /dev /SDA2, And where are we going to mount this partition? We are going to mount it under /mount. So the /mount directory is where the installation is going to be. So that's the simple command, and then we just hit enter. Now, we need to we need to mount also the STA1 partition in the boot directory or EFI directory, which both are not existing yet actually. So I personally like to create the boot and the EFI directory because it's visually for me easier always to remember where the EFI directory is, because in the book directory you might get also other directories and then I have no idea anymore where to look for. So I like to do that just for me as a reference. So basically I need to create first the boot directory and the EFI directory before I can mount SDA1 in there. So I could create one directory per command, but there is a command which allows us to create two directories at once. And this is the command. So it's mkdir for make directory. This is a standard command. But the option which allows us to create multiple directories is the -p option for parent directory. So basically means I want to create the EFI directory and the boot directory. So the boot directory in this case is the parent directory of EFI. So then we type in /mount because this is the directory where installation is and it's already existing. And then the two directories we want to create. So /boot /EFI. And we just hit enter. There you go. Now we can mount finally STA1 into this EFI directory. And to do this, we'll use the same commands as before. So we'll type in mount, then the partition path, so /dev /STA1. And then the mount point is /mount /boot /EFI and hit enter. Now I'll clean up the terminal and I type in again ls blk because I want to show you here now we can see our mount point. So SDA1 is mounted under boot EFI, under mount boot EFI, and SDA2, which is our installation directory, is going to be, our installation partition, sorry, is mounted under the mount directory here. So everything looks good. All right. I'll check the chat here if there's something else. Okay, seems to be good until now. If you guys don't understand something or you have any question, please let me know and I'll take a moment to post down. Okay. So now we partitioned, formatted, and mounted our mount points. Now we can proceed to installing the base system. Okay. To install the base system, we use the packstrap command, which is going to strap the base packages and put it in the installation directory. And we have to tell packstrap which directory we want to install in. So we know already it's going to be /mount. And then we need to tell packstrap also which packages we want to install. So we need to install base, obviously. Then in this case, I'm going to install also Linux. The Linux package, it's containing the latest Linux kernel. And installing this package will install basically the latest Linux kernel. If you want to use the LTS version of the kernel, you'll have to replace this with -LTS. But I want to use the latest version, so I go for Linux here. And then I want to install also Linux-firmware. If I type in correctly, it's easier. There you go. And this is going to help you if you have some firmware which needs to be recognized by the system when you boot up the next time. And then I'm going to install also an editor which is Nano because I'm going to need this later to edit some files. So before I start with installation, I'll check the chat here. Can you put boot in just boot or you need to use boot EFI? Hi, Jakub. Thanks for the question. So you can also put it in boot if you like to. As I said before, I like to put it in the boot EFI just for me as a visual reference, but it's not a requirement. It can be also /boot. That's fine. So now that we have the packages here in the packstrap command, we just hit enter. And it's going to download and install the packages. So it's going to take a minute here to do everything. And while it's doing this, just want to remind you guys, my partner Alex and me, we are remodeling our website recently, and we started a new project where we are refurbishing old computers with new hardware. So we are upgrading the SSDs and the RAMs, and we are installing Linux on those machines, and we try to sell them. You know, like this, we want to give our contribution also to sustainability. So if you want to know more about this, please come to the website, have a look at our store. and you'll see all the infos about that there. So there you go. The packages, the base packages are now installed. So let me clean up the terminal so that we have a bit more space. There you go. So it's not in the chat. Okay, that's fine. So we can move on to the next point. So now it comes the Fstab generation. So what is the Fstab file? The Fstab file is the file which contains all the mount points of our system. So remember before we mounted the SDA1 to EFI directory, we mounted SDA2 to the mount directory. So these two mount points basically are going to be stored in one file called Fstab, which is going to be used by the system when it boots up to recognize that we have mount points that the system has to care about. So how do we do that? So we'll type in the gen fstab command, and I'm going to type in now the whole command, and then I'll explain you what it does, okay? So -U, and then /mount, then twice the major than sign, then /mount, /etc, /fstab. So this command is saying, generate the fstab file based on the U. This U here represents the UUID of your drive. So the universal unique identifier of the partitions. And then it's going to put the content of this output in a file called fstab under the etc directory, under the mount directory. So before we proceed with this, let me show you something. I'll type in again lsblk with the F option, which is showing you the file system options, the file system details of the drives. You can see here we have a field called UUID. Okay, this is the universal unique identifier. And as you can see, SDA, which is our installation directory, has a UUID of CD135, etc., etc. So it's a very long number. And the fstab file is going to be generated using this parameter, and because it's inequivocally the only parameter with this number in the system. So again, let's go back and type in gen fstab -U. Again, this is using the UUID /mount. Then this symbol here, the twice major than, it means create or append to a file. Also if the file it's not existing yet, it will create it. And if the file it's already existing, it will update it with the information that we are telling the command to do. So then we type in /mount /etc /fstab and hit enter. All right, so let me check. The fstab stands for file system table. Exactly. Okay, so now if we look at the content of fstab, we'll see what's in there. So let's type in cat /mount /etc /fstab. The cat command it means concatenate. It's used normally to concatenate multiple files, but it can be used also to display the content of one file. So in this case, I want to display the content of fstab. Then I hit enter here. And so you can see we have here the first UUID, which is from SDA2. We have the UUID here. We have our mount point. This is always in the second position. In this case, it's the root directory. We have the file system type, ext4. We have the options of this partition. And then we have these two numbers here. So the first number is a 0. This is the dump backup. We don't need to worry about this. It's very rarely anyway used. What's important is this 1 here. The 1 indicates that this partition is going to be checked. The file system of this partition is going to be checked at every time the machine boots. So if we would have, for example, also a home partition in here with his own UUID and mount point and file system type, his own options, this would be a number 2. In this case, it would mean that the partition will be checked as a number 2 in the system. The root partition is always checked first, and the other partitions are always checked after. The EFI partition is not to be checked for that, and so is also the swap partition or the swap file, so that you know what's in here. And then we have also, of course, SDA1, which is our EFI partition. So we have the UUID here for the first partition. We have the mount point. We have the file system type and the options. Well, actually, these are all the options here. So there you go. And so let's clean up the terminal. And now we can actually leave the installer and enter the installation. This sounds a little bit clumsy, but what does it mean basically is that we are leaving the Arch ISO installer and we move into the installation we just downloaded the packages for. And how do we do this? We'll type in arch-root /mount. So we are telling we want to go into the root user of the /mount directory, which is where the system, the base system we installed before. And then we hit enter. And as you can see now we have the login prompt changed. That means we are now in the installation and not anymore in the installer. By the way, you might have seen in many different terminals here when you have a hashtag after the login, that means you are logged in as a root user. If you are a normal user here, instead of the hashtag, you will have always a $sign, just as a reference to know. All right. I'll check the chat if there's any question. All right. So now that we enter the installation, it's time to create the swap file. So for this, we'll type in fallocate. I'll explain you the command after. -l 2 gigabytes. Oops, sorry, 2 gigabytes /swap file. So we are telling the system allocate file. Fallocate means file allocation. So file allocate. -l is actually means length, but we can interpret it as size. The size is 2 gigabytes and the name of the swap file is /swap file. So it's a very simple command. So we are telling the system to allocate 2 gigabytes for its swap file. And then we hit enter. Now we need write and read permission to be able to work with the swap file. So I'm not going to go too deep in Linux permissions because it's a huge topic, but I'm going to show you just command here. It's a chmod. Chmod is a command used to change permissions on a file on Linux or on a directory. And the permissions for write and read is 600. So again, I'm not gonna go too deep here, but just as a reference, the first number represents permissions for the owner of the file, the second for the group of the file, and the third one for everybody else. And the 6 represents 4 plus 2. 4 is the permission for writing and 2 for reading. That's why we have a 6 right here. This is the permission we need for the swap file. So 600 and then the name of the file, so /swap file. And hit enter. Okay, now we can make the swap because we have permissions to do that. So we'll type in mkswap, then a space, and then /swap file, and hit enter. Now we can create the swap by typing in swap on, and then the swap file name, so /swap file, and hit enter. All right, this is for the swap file. Before I go to the question in the chat, let me also finish the last step for the swap file, which is we need to enter the swap file in the Fstab file. So to do this, we'll type in nano. We are using the editor we installed before. And if you remember, the Fstab file is under etc /fstab and hit enter. Now we scroll down to the empty space here and we'll enter. The swap file doesn't have any UUID, so we just enter the name of the swap file, so /swap file. And then the mount point, swap file doesn't have any mount point, so we'll type in none. Then we need to type in the file system type, which is a swap file system type, so we'll type in swap. And then for the options, we type just defaults, nothing special here. And for the dump backup is a 0, and for the file system check is also a 0. Swap file is not checked at boot. Doesn't have to be checked at boot, doesn't need to be checked at boot. And then we hit Control and O, then Enter to save the file, and Control X to exit the editor. So let me go back to the chat here to see some questions. Chmod 777. Well, I wouldn't recommend that because 777 means executions. So especially the last 7, you're giving execution powers to people who are not sudos, for example, administrators. So anybody could go into the system and delete the file. So 600 is the safest way to go, in my view. Okay. So we created the swap file. Now it's time to move on to the localization stuff. So let me first clean up the terminal. So the first thing we need to do is now to define the local time. The local time is defined by the region and by the city you are in, or the closest city you are in. So it's always a little tricky to know where, what the system recognizes. And for that, there is actually a command that you can use to find out. So the command is time date, which we used already at the beginning, CTL, so time date control. And you can type in list time zones and hit enter. Uh, if I type in correctly, it's maybe easier. So I missed here an E. There you go. So as you can see here, the list is very long. So it can be tedious to scroll through this list here. I don't want to do that. So I'll quit by typing in Q and I hit Control L to clean up the terminal. Now I pull up the same command again. And you're joking, Enderman. Okay, good to know. Jakub, what happens when you put 0 as a second number? That means the second 0 on the second number means this particular partition, or in this case the swap file, is not going to be checked at boot. Okay, so the file system is not going to be checked at boot. And if it's a 1, it's going to be the first one checked at boot. If it's 2, it's going to be the second one checked at boot, and so on. So let's go back to the time zones here. So we can actually extrapolate the time zone we need to know. For example, if you are in Europe, or if you are in America, or if you are in Asia or Africa, for example, we can use this extension. So we'll type in a pipe, which is a vertical slash, and we can use the grep function, which is going to filter the list based on the parameter we give to the grep function. So for example, I am in Europe. So I'll type in here Europe and hit enter. And the file is going to show me everything which has Europe in it. So here I can definitely choose my city, which is Zurich. If you would be in America, you can pull up, for example, again, the same command and replace Euro with America. And you will present it with the name of places within America only. So then once you see your region, so I'll clean up the terminal and go back to Europe for me, I can see my region is Europe / Zurich. So I need this information to go on to the next step. So I'll clean up the terminal and we can now move to the command, which is ln. I'm going to explain you the command in a moment. -sf /user /share /zone info /Europe /Zurich. Oops, has to be in capital letter, Zurich. Then space /etc /local time. There you go. So we are here creating ln. It means it's a link. Okay, we are linking the information of this time zone to the local time file in the etc directory. The S option is creating a symbolic link, or a soft link if you will, and the F option is forcing this link to be created and to overwrite any local time file that is already present in the etc directory. Okay, so we are telling the system to create our local time based on this time zone and to replace it with whatever version is already there. It's going to be replaced with this information here. And once you're ready, you just hit enter, and that's done. Now that the local time is set, we need to synchronize the hardware clock to the system clock. So we'll type in HW clock for hardware clock, of course, space -- sys2hc, so system with hardware clock basically, and hit enter. There you go. So that's it for the clocks. Now we move on to the locales. So to work on the locales, we need first to edit the locale.gen file, which is the file used to generate the locales. So we'll do this by typing in nano /etc /locale.gen and hit enter. And here we have a list of locales that we can use. And you have to scroll through the list here and look the one that you want to use, depending also on your language. So for example, I want to use anyway English US, but I could use, for example, German, Switzerland. If I would choose German, for example, just select the locale you want to install and select the version which has UTF-8, because that's the one that the locale-gen command will recognize. And then we need to delete this hashtag So basically we uncomment this line here so that the locale-gen command afterwards can go through the list and will pick up the locale which is not commented, and we'll create the locales from that. So now we need to save this file by hitting Control O and then enter, and we exit the editor with Control X. Okay. Now we need to generate the locales, like I said, by typing in locale-gen. What this command does is basically going through the list we saw now and will pick up the list, the locale we uncommented, and will generate the locales accordingly. So we just hit enter. It's going to take a second here to create it. There you go. And the last step for the locales is to configure the locale.conf file so that we have the localization complete. And to do this, we need to edit the locale.conf file. So edit means nano again. So we'll type in nano /etc/locale.conf. As a reference, so you know, the etc directory is always the directory with the configurations files of the system. So that's where we find most of the configuration stuff. And then we hit enter. And we'll type in this string here. So lang for language, all in capital letters, equal. And then the string we chose before. So the locale we chose before. In my case, it was en underscore us in capital letter dot utf-8. And then Control O and enter to save the file, and Control X to exit the editor. All right. So let's have a look at the chat here. What's the difference between an US UTF? Yeah, there are two different kind of strings, and the locale-gen file is going to recognize basically for generating the locales. If you do it with the ISO, it will not work. The ISO, I think it's used for other parameters, but not for the locales, for the generating the locales. Tab will give you the list. Yusef, thank you. Yep, that's true. That's also one option. All right. So the next step is to go to the host stuff. So let me clean up the terminal here. And the first thing we do is to work on the host name. So we'll type in nano /etc/host name and hit enter. So here you basically give a name to your machine. And I will call my machine Arch, just simply, and then hit Control O and enter to save the file, and Control X to exit the editor. You can call it whatever you want, that's your choice. And now we need to also work on the hosts file. So this is the file containing the IP and the domains of the machine. So I'll type in nano /etc/hosts and hit enter. So for example, if you have a static IP here, this is the time to put it in. You know, you can put in your static IP, connecting it to one domain, and basically your machine is going to be configured like this, but we don't have a static domain. I don't certainly have one right now. So I'll just fill it up with standard information, which is provided also by the wiki, which is 127.0.0.1 localhost. This is what you type normally in the browser when you want to see the IP. And this is the first IP is the IP version 4, so 127.0.0.1. On the second line, we put the IP version 6, which is : 1, and we call it again localhost. That's the same thing, just with the IPv6 address. And in the last address, we'll put in also 127.0.1.1. And here we configure the host name. So in my case, it's Arch. You replace this according to what you chose before. And then local domain. Well, if I type in correctly, it's better. So dot local domain. And then a tab again. And then the host name again. So in the case, Arch. You replace this accordingly to what you chose before. Then hit Control O again and enter to save the file, and Control X to exit the editor. All right, let me have a look again on the chat. Okay, yep. Yes, you can use the tabs. Yes, definitely. And you can also use the echo command. That's also fine. There are many ways you can create the locale.conf file. That's no problem. Yeah. I tend to use the editor just to show people also how to use the editor stuff. But the echo command, there's many ways to do that. Thank you, Enderman, for the for the input, and also Yusef for the tab suggestion. All right. So next step is to create a password for our root user. So we'll type in pass wd and hit enter, and we just type in a new password here and hit enter here, and retype it and hit enter again. So password is updated successfully. Alrighty, so now we need to install some packages. Let's go to the good stuff. We need to install the bootloader and some networking tools. So let's type in pacman capital S. Pacman is the package manager for Arch Linux, and capital S is telling Pacman to install the packages which are coming now. So the first one is grub. This is our bootloader. Then we need to install also EFI boot mgr, which is required as this is a UEFI system. Then we are going to install also some networking packages. So the first one is network manager. I want to install also network manager applet. This is an applet which helps us to configure the networks afterwards. And some wireless stuff. So the first one is wireless underscore tools. And then we have WPA underscore supplicant for our keys. And I want to install also dialog. Again, another networking tool. I could install also os-prober. This is going to be useful if you are installing another OS another time or another Linux distro. And os-prober will help you to detect also the other OS installed on your machine. And then two packages I need anyway, because I need access sometimes to Windows formatted disks or USB sticks. So one is mtools, and the other one is DOS FS tools. So these tools, they allow us to access FAT file system or to write FAT file systems on USB sticks or external drives as well. And then I'm going to install also two development packages because I'm going to need them anyway, sooner or later. So the first one is base-devil. And the second one is Linux-headers. So if in installing the base system, you install Linux LTS, so the Linux LTS kernel. In this case, you need to install Linux-headers-LTS. The kernel and the headers need to match, so type in accordingly. I use the normal Linux kernel, so the latest Linux kernel, so I just need to install Linux-headers, but if you install the LTS kernel, you have to add here-LTS. And let me see, what else can we install? I think for now it's all. So let's now hit enter. And here it's telling us what packages are going to be installed also. And that's fine, I accept the defaults. And the installation is about 172 megs, so I'll just hit enter to proceed. So it's gonna take a couple of seconds here to download and install everything. There you go, that goes pretty fast. Yep, I'll check the chat again for questions. Nothing new coming up. Actually, this is about if you other terminals, apps fonts look terrible. Zero theory. You'll have to elaborate a little bit on that. I don't really understand what you mean. And a few other terminal apps fonts look terrible. Okay. Well, it depends on the packages you install. So, Xorg normally contains a lot of fonts for that. I'll have to look into this after, because right now I can't tell you exactly what the fix could be. Okay, yeah. All right. So we installed now the packages. Let me clean up the terminal. Now it comes the time to install the bootloader. But first, let me type in lsblk because I want to have my mount points in front of me. And so to install the bootloader, I'm going to type in grub-install. This is the installation command. So the first parameter for the installation of grub is to tell grub what kind of machine we are installing on. This is a 64-bit machine, so I'll type in --target, which is telling the target parameter, equal x86 _64 -EFI. Okay, this is the target for a 64-bit machine. If you have a 32-bit machine, then in this case you will type in i386-PC, if I'm not mistaken. But in this case, this is the parameter for the 64-bit machine. And then we need to tell grub in which directory do we have to install it. So we'll type in dash dash EFI dash directory equal. And we need to put here the mount point. So you will see here, this is our EFI directory, STA1, and this is the mount point. So we need to type in here basically /boot /EFI because I have an EFI directory, right? Then the last but not least, we need to tell also the bootloader ID. So we'll type in dash dash bootloader dash ID and equal. Our ID on a bootloader is called grub. So everything capital letter, grub. So once you're sure that the command is wrote down correctly, you just hit enter. And there you go, installation finished, no error reported. So that's a good sign. And now we can proceed in creating the configuration file for grub. So we'll type in grub dash k config. So this means basically make configuration file for grub. And I'll type in the command and then I'll tell you what it does. So dash o /boot /grub.cfg. So we are telling basically to create the configuration file and to put its output in a file called grub.cfg, which is under the grub directory, which is under the boot directory. Okay, it's very simple. And then we just hit enter. And there you go. So we can now go to the next point. Let me look at the chat here if there's something new. Yeah, I see what you mean with the font stuff. Yeah, something is definitely missing. I would definitely suggest you try to reinstall the Xorg because it contains a lot of fonts. Possible something went wrong there, but I cannot assure that it will work. I'll have to look into it. But try reinstalling Xorg first anyway. All right. So I would say now the next step would be to activate our internet service, so the network manager, so that it's going to be automatically started when we boot the machine next time. Okay, so we'll type in systemctl enable network manager with capital N and capital M and hit enter. So it creates a couple of symbolic links here, and the symbolic links they will basically start the system as soon as the machine boots. So when we boot up the machine next time, if you have an Ethernet cable, you're going to have an IP immediately. If not, we'll just have to connect to the internet, but the service is active anyway. So I would say let's clean up the terminal and create also a user before we reboot the machine. And to do that, we'll type in user add. I type in the command and then I explain you what it does. -m capital G wheel and then the username. I'm going to choose my name here. And then here the command basically says, so user add is the command used to add a new user, very clearly. So the M option is telling user add to create a user with the home directory, which is home U directory. The G option here, the capital G option, is telling the user add to add hermano to the wheel group as a supplementary group. So every time you create a user, let me cancel this shortly and I type in ID. Every time you create a user, the system automatically give the GID, the group user ID, to the user itself. So if I create Hermano, my JIT will be Hermano. But I want to make sure also that my groups here, my supplementary group, it belongs to the wheel, because we are going to give the wheel group sudo privileges. So that's why we want to add the capital G option. Okay, so I'll type in again user add -m for the home directory, then capital G for the supplementary group, and the supplementary group is called wheel, and then again the username. So in my case, my name, and hit enter. Okay. Now we need to create a password for this user, so we'll type in passwd and then the username, and hit enter. Enter a new password and retype it, and we have our user there. So before I go on here, let me check the chat here. Exactly, yeah. The Xorg server. This is exactly the package you need to try to install. That's going to install you a lot of fonts. So probably where something went wrong with the installation of Xorg, try to reinstall it, and it should be fixed. Yeah, perfect. All right, so we created the user, and now we need to give this user also sudo privileges. And to do this, I'm going to type in the command again, and again I'm going to explain you. So I'll type in editor in capital letters =nano, and then visudo. So the visudo command is normally opened with the v editor, which is not installed right now. So I'm telling here the system to use nano as an editor to open the visudo file, basically, which is used where we can configure actually our wheel group for giving the wheel group sudo privileges. So once the command is written, we just hit enter. And then we scroll down until we find here the wheel line. And we have to be careful because there are two of those. There is one which says all equal all, no password all. And this is the one we don't want because otherwise everybody in the wheel group with no password will be able to have sudo privileges. We need the first one which says wheel all equal all all. And what we need to do here is to just basically uncomment this line and then hit Control O and enter to save the file and Control X to exit the editor. So now the wheel group, everybody who is in the wheel group will have sudo privileges. So when you create a user, you have to be always careful to which group you want to assign them. So every time you will assign a user to the wheel group, he will have automatically sudo privileges. Okay, so in this case now Hermano has also sudo privileges. Alrighty. So there is one thing I still want to install before we reboot the machine, and that is OpenSSH. And I'm going to need this because when I reboot the machine, I need SSH to log in into my terminal again. Otherwise, I won't be able to show you the terminal with these big fonts. All right, so I'll type in pacman-s. This is an optional step for you guys. You don't have to do this. OpenSSH and hit enter. Accept the installation by hitting enter. And there you go. So now we did everything for the most part. Now we can actually exit the installation and return to the installer by typing in exit. And we need to unmount all the partitions we mounted by typing in umount -a. So mount is for mounting, umount is for unmounting, and the -a option means unmount all the partitions. Then we hit enter. We get some errors here, but that's fine. We can ignore those. And before I reboot the machine, let me check the chat again. All right, yeah, okay. Yeah, the Xorg stuff will definitely fix the problem. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna reboot the machine now, and I'm going to be logged off of my terminal here because it's connected via SSH. So I'll just type in reboot and hit enter, and I'll close this up because I want to show you guys here. We have our bootloader. Sorry that it's small, but the guest additions here are a little bit complaining. And anyway, the bootloader was installed correctly. Now we can start the system by just hitting enter. And I will log in as Hermano, the user we just created, and type in my password. There you go. So again, let me first start SSH so that I can go back to the big terminal. You can see them better. So I'll type in sudo systemctl start sshd and hit enter. And I'll have to enter my password here. There you go. And I type in IP space A because I know I have an IP already as I have an Ethernet cable. Don't worry if you have Wi-Fi, we'll pick this up in a second. So I need to log in into the IP ending with 180. So let me pull up here my terminal and I'll type in SSH hermano at 192.168.178. And what did I say was the IP? I already forgot that. 180. All right. .180 and hit enter. Yeah, I'll have to type in SSH. Maybe it's easier, right? Yeah. So there you go. And enter my password here. And there you go. Clean up the terminal and go full screen. Now we see a bigger terminal again. So, all right. Let me check you guys what you can you explain how to generate a new Pacman mirror list after you finish the install? Yes, definitely. Okay, we'll do this. We'll do this at the end. All right, so we now rebooted the machine. I have an Ethernet cable. Again, this is connected via Ethernet cable. If you have a Wi-Fi right now, you would have to type in NMTUI and hit enter. Here you can go to activate a connection. You'll see a list of networks here. You can select yours and enter your password, and you will have an IP as well. I don't have a Wi-Fi card, so in VirtualBox here, I don't see anything else. But if you do have a Wi-Fi card, you can select your network there, enter the password, and you will have an IP as well. So let me log it out. There you go. So now we activated the internet. We create a user. Let me clean up the terminal. We have an internet connection again. And the next step is to actually install the graphics driver. So I will not install the drivers on this VirtualBox, but I'll show you the packages for that. And to install, for example, if you have an Intel card, you will type in sudo. Now we need to put in sudo because we are running as a normal user, but with sudo privileges. Pacman capital S. The package for Intel card is XF86 video Intel. Right, then when you hit enter, you can proceed with the installation and install your drivers. If you have an AMD card, you would replace Intel here with AMD GPU. And I can tell you, I actually installed this driver on my main machine here, which has a Sapphire RX 5700, and it works absolutely flawlessly. And then if you have an NVIDIA card, you will replace here the whole package with NVIDIA and also NVIDIA-utils. There are some other packages which we could eventually use for NVIDIA if you experience problems, but normally these two packages works well with the most part of NVIDIA cards. So once you're done here, hit enter and proceed with the installation. Not gonna do this because this is in VirtualBox anyway. And all right, let me check here the chat again. So you have a problem booting up, 25 seconds boot time. That's a long time. System yellows blame. Okay, well, seems to be something went definitely wrong in the installation. Well, I can suggest if you installed if you have a home directory and a root directory separated, you could try to reinstall the system in the root directory. If not, I'll have to look into it, or maybe someone in the chat can have an idea of what that could be. Right now, I cannot really tell you. I'll need to look this. I need to look into this. Okay. All right. So the next point is installing the display server. So we were talking about Xorg before with our chat here, with somebody in the chat here. And to install Xorg, we'll type in sudo again, pacman-capital S Xorg, and hit enter, and enter the root password. So the Xorg package is going to install here all these packages, and Xorg servers is also included as the 11th package of the Xorg group. So we accept the installation by hitting enter here, and we proceed to install the packages again by hitting enter. So that's not going to take long. It's a fairly small install. There you go. So I'll clean up the terminal. And now comes the point to decide what kind of desktop environment we want to install. So the desktop environment is composed of two things. We need a display manager and a desktop environment. So as I said at the beginning of the video, I'm going to install here GNOME, but I'll give you also the packages for KDE and also LXDE and eventually XFC4 if you guys want to. So for GNOME, the display manager is GDM, the GNOME Display Manager. All right, so we would type in here now sudo pacman -capital S GDM and hit enter. I'll accept the installation here and just hit enter. Don't worry, I'll show you the packages after for KDE. There you go. And the next step is to enable GDM. So to enable the display manager so that when we start the machine, it's going to be automatically started. So to do this, we'll type in system CTL, system control, enable GDM in my case. Then I need to authenticate with my password and hit enter. Did I mistype my password maybe? There you go. And I clean up the terminal. So if you want to install KDE, I definitely recommend to install STDM. This is the display manager for KDE. STDM is simple desktop display manager. So to do this, you will type in sudo pacman -capital S STDM and hit enter. And you would have to repeat the same process for enabling STDM with system control enable STDM so that it starts when the system boots. Now, if you want to install the LXDE desktop environment, LXDE comes already with the display manager in the package, which is LXDM. So if you plan to install LXDE here, you could just type in LXDE, proceed with the installation, and then enable LXDM as a display manager. So you would type in system control, enable LXDM, and then you have already everything working, the display manager and the desktop environment. If you want to install XFCE, you could, well, they say you can use actually, the ArchWiki says you can use actually display manager of your choice. The one which I found actually works most of the time because it's cross-platform, it's LightDM. And so you would type in now LightDM in this case, and you would need to install also a greeter, otherwise it will not work. And the greeter is LightDM-greeter. So you would install these two packages and then enable LightDM. So system control, enable LightDM, and then the display manager will be working when you boot the machine. Now, we need to install also the desktop environment. This is the big stuff. So in my case here, I will install GNOME, but I'll show you first the packages for KDE. Before we go there, let me check the chat here. I'll see some questions. I have a ThinkPad. Thanks for video for the BIOS. Well, if you have a, it's not really, it doesn't really matter whether you choose BIOS or UEFI. Performance-wise, I don't think you're going to see any advantage or disadvantage between one or the other. So, it's a matter of preference. Some people like to have UEFI, some people like to have BIOS, but whatever you choose, it's going to be fine. Yeah, as Enderman is saying, probably UEFI will be a little bit faster in boot times. Depends also on the machine you have, of course. But in terms of using the system per se, it's probably not going to make a lot of difference, probably. However, if one day you might decide to upgrade your RAM or install a bigger SSD, then maybe you might want to go with UEFI, as it's probably, would say, maybe better compatible with SSDs and bigger RAMs. So that would be maybe the only situation where I would switch to UEFI. All right. So I give you the packages for KDE. So KDE comprises of several things. So the first one is Plasma. That's the basic package. And then you have some optional packages, but I recommend you install them as well because they give you a more complete experience in KDE. And the first one is KDE-applications. And if you want to install also user directories, like photos, videos, documents and stuff like that, you can also install xdg-user-dirs. And if you plan to use also the Discover Software Center, which is the software center for KDE, and you want to update the packages from there, you need to install also package-kit -qt5. So these are the the four actually that I normally install when I install KDE. There might be some other packages you need to install, but these are the basic ones I install all the time when I install KDE. If you want to install LXD, as I said before, you installed already before LXD. That's very simple. And if you want to install XFCE, you can install XFCE4. and also the XFC4, I think it's called Goodies, if you want to have some extra packages installed. But if you want to install GNOME, we basically install two packages. Well, one is required, the other one is optional. So the first one is GNOME, of course, and the optional one is GNOME-extra. GNOME-extra is going to install some extra application which you might want to have or not. In this case, I will let it out because it's going to just make the installation a little bit shorter if I just install GNOME. But if you want to have a more complete experience with more packages, definitely install also the GNOME-extra package, and that's going to be also fine. So I'm going to hit enter here and re-enter my password. And again, it's showing us which packages are going to be installed. So I just accept the defaults here and I hit enter. Again, accept the default repositories here. So I'll hit enter and accept the installation by hitting enter. It's going to be around the 343 megabytes download. So I just hit enter now. It's going to take a moment to download and install the packages. And again, I want to remind you guys, we just recently switched our website to a new design, and we started a new kind of project with sustainability, as you might have seen from some of my videos. So we are now starting to sell also old computers, whether PCs or Macs. We are going to upgrade them with new RAMs, SSDs, and we are going to install Linux on those machines because they can live longer with Linux installed. And we are offering guarantees and support and stuff like that. So come to our website, have a look at it if you're curious, and let us know also your feedback if you like to. We are now almost done here installing the packages. I'll go back for the chat here shortly. Okay, no problem. All right, so GNOME is installed. So let me clean up the terminal. So what we do now, it's basically reboot the machine and everything should now work fine. So we will be greeted by grub, enter the install, enter the system, and we will be greeted by the GNOME, by the GDM, the GNOME Display Manager, where we can enter with our user password, and we will be greeted by the GNOME desktop environment. So we could type in reboot and reboot the machine, but in my case, I have to do a little trick here, and that is I have to power off the machine. So I'll type in power off here and hit enter. And I need to be sudo to do that. Thank you. And hit enter now. So I go back to my VirtualBox here and I'll show you why. So I need to restart the machine here because I need to change the graphics driver. For some reasons, which I'm still working on here, the Arch guest on Arch Linux host doesn't have 3D acceleration. So I need to switch to the VirtualBox SVGA, otherwise I can't go full screen. So I'll just do this and hit OK, and then hit start again. Then enter the system here. And you can see we have GDM, so let me enter here my password before I go full screen. There you go. And then I go Control F to go full screen here. There you go. And right click here on the desktop. So I want to just increase the font size. If the system comes with me. Okay, the system doesn't want to play with now. All right. Well, let me just I think the machine froze for some reason. Don't know if you guys hear me. The system here, the VirtualBox froze here and it froze my system. So I basically have to restart the machine. I'll be back with you in a sec. So guys, I'm back. I hope you can see me. Let me know if you can see me. I had a problem with the system on VirtualBox here. It froze me on me, which is not good. So you guys let me know. I'm back up here. All good. Okay. Thank you, Alex. So, all right. Thanks, guys. So I had a problem here with the machine. Let me see if I can recover it. I'll need to sort this out today. I'm actually testing so that you guys know. I'm testing actually another machine, another virtual machine on Arch Linux, which is working a little better. Let me go back first to your questions here, as I missed some of those. Most of Very true, Yusuf. Yeah, what you're saying. Many laptops nowadays have two graphic cards, and Pop! OS is actually very, very good. Yes, that's very true. They are doing an amazing job implementing those things. Yeah. Well, I mean, you never know. Maybe it comes to Arch as well. Probably it's just a matter of time before it's going to be implemented. Okay, okay. So I'm going to start the machine again here, and hopefully this time it doesn't freeze on me. If it does, I apologize. I'll see you back in a second, but I will try it out. If not, I have to switch back to the virtual machine driver. Let me see if I can get it working. Normally the problem comes always with the full screen here. There you go. So it seems to be fine right now, so that's fine. So I'll just here go. I don't make it full screen just to avoid any problem, but I'm just gonna bump up here the fonts and just make it tidy bigger. There you go. So we have our system here. And the first thing I do always is to check my terminal. And I'll go here full screen. And let's check for updates. So sudo pacman-s yyuu. If I type correctly, it's better. yyuu, and hit enter. Passwords. All right, and there are already some some updates here, but I'm not gonna do them now. Normally I would, but not in this case. Anyway, don't know if you guys can see. I will try to make here the terminal a little bigger. Let me change here my keyboard as I need to change the original language here. Because if I do it during the installation, it's then going to break. So this is this one here. There you go. Add, close, close, pack. Voila. Terminal again. Now I can make it bigger, I suppose. Thank you very much. There you go. Now it's better. What I wanted to show you is also here we have under the settings. This happens always when you're installing Arch Linux without the printing service. Oh, sorry. I wanted to actually pull up the settings. Let me do this by clicking here and then setting. It's easier. So if we go under settings here and we go under printers, for example, you'll see we have this error here, and that's because the print service is not yet installed. So if you guys want me to show you how to install this, let me know in the chat so that we can do that. I will anyway, we will anyway make a live stream next month about these tasks post install on Arch Linux because there are several of those things about the Bluetooth, also about the SSD trim and so on. But if you guys want to have a preview here, we can do it also now. And so that you know, this X here doesn't mean that the drivers are not installed. It just means that it's there is no sound. So we just have to pull this up and it works fine. Okay, so this is the basic install of Arch Linux with GNOME. Again, I apologize for the freeze. I'm going to use probably for the next stream another virtual machine, which works a little bit better on Arch. But let me know if you have any question right now so that we can proceed, or if you have any other question, we can look into that. That's also a good point, Yusuf. Yeah. Partitions on BIOS are limited to 4, yeah. So UEFI gives you more flexibility on that, if you need more partitions, of course. Yep. Hey, David. Well, glad that it works. That's nice to see, nice to hear. Glad it worked out for you. Let me know how you like Arch. It's surely very speedy. So as an info, guys, I am also telling you the next, I think Monday probably, we are going to write on our website. I'm going to write a post, a blog post with all the commands used in this tutorial. So if you like to copy and paste, you can do that. I'm going to do this on Monday, as tomorrow I'm not going to be working. So how to control the backlight on Arch with WM? I'm going to have to look into that. Or maybe someone knows the answer to this. Let me see if I find something. Yeah. Okay, for the backlight, there's a lot of options here. We need to check into the ACPI modules. I think I'm gonna look into this and get back to you because it's gonna take a little time, if it's okay with you. So these are all points that we can look into it. I want to ask you guys if you have any question right now regarding this, regarding the tutorial, or if you would like to explore something else regarding the installation. I'm noting down these points that you guys asking in the chat here, and I'm going to definitely have a look at them. And we can still, we can still post the comments and in the video when it's uploaded, and we can still work on them anyway. Well, thanks for coming. Also to you guys. I assume your username is Cyfraka or the Cifraka. I don't know. Anyway, thanks also for coming, and you too. Stay safe. It's crazy time around here. Okay, so if there are no questions regarding the install here, I think we can wrap this up. The video will be shortly uploaded on YouTube as well. So if you guys want to rewatch it, oh yeah, sorry, Enderman, generating the Pacman mirror list. Oh, sorry about that. I forgot that. So let me, well, we can let this machine on here. What I show you what we can do here. Let me pull up here a new tab. And there is one thing what we can do. And On the wiki here, the wiki is always my reference because they have the most up-to-date, of course, infos. So there is here the Pacman mirror list generator. And it's it can be used as it says here, the official Arch-Linux mirror list is available from the Pacman mirror list package. Although in my experience, I can tell you, you can use also, there is this reflector script, which works also fine. It's going to be basically taking the fastest mirrors closest to you. However, in my experience, I have to say until now, I always had the best results by putting basically the mirrors nearest to me, or in my country at least, on the top of the list. And that has been always for me the best solution. I had some issues with the not an issue per se, but having an issue with the reflector package, putting the fastest, theoretically the faster mirrors on top. Sometimes I got some timeout errors because for some reason they were maybe fast in that moment. The script was generating the mirrors, but the speed of the mirrors changes constantly. But I found in my case, for example, the Swiss mirrors are always the fastest ones when I put them on top because they are in my country and I can basically guarantee the speed of the mirror the whole time. So I recommend you always to put in a mirror list, like I showed you before, the closest mirrors to you. That's gonna be the best bet. At least this is my opinion. Thank you to you guys too for coming. It was a pleasure to have you on the chat. And yeah, and we're gonna see you again definitely next month. We are going to have another stream again. Also, guys, if you have some ideas or if you have some feedbacks or if you want to see something actually on a live stream, let us know. We will work on that and we will try to pull up the information and make a nice tutorial for you guys. So we're always open to feedbacks and to your wishes as well. And let us know in the comments if you have any wish. Okay. Yes. Check the last thing in the chat. Yes, reflector. As I said, yeah, that works most of the time. For me, I like to put my country's mirrors on the top, but that's a preference thing anyway. All right. So thank you guys for coming to the chat. I really appreciate it. And as I said before, the video is going to be on YouTube in a couple of seconds. Thank you, Yusuf. Thank you for the feedback. And yeah, I'll see you soon. I wish you a great weekend, guys. Have a nice Sunday. Stay safe in these crazy times, and have fun with Arch Linux. And let me know in the comments, also in the video, if you guys installed on the new machine, how you like it and how is it going. Okay. So I wish you a great weekend again, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye, guys.